So, good afternoon, you guys. I want to talk about the Demon Slayer movie, and I got some good news and I got some bad news. That unfortunately, when I watched the film, it was so long that I fell asleep during parts of it. But I know a lot about like the format of the film, so I'll review it. But I'm also willing to, watch the movie again and give it a second chance. But I felt that it had a lot of strengths and it had a lot of weaknesses. That I think the first thing that I want to do is talk about the weaknesses of the film. That this was not that well made of a film in a way because I felt that it was highly repetitive. Like they had lots and lots of flashbacks. And then the other part of it is that it had a very like repetitive format where it was like fight sequence flashback, or fight sequence extended flashback. There are a lot of people who were dozing off in the theaters. Like I did talk to some people when I saw that in North Haven. A lot of people felt that way. But I do think that the film reminds me of a couple of movies. It reminds me of Bruce Lee's Enter the Dragon because really, like what happens in this film is that the Demon Slayers, they are a group of people who go around fighting demons, and usually what happens to them is that some of them become demon slayers because they've had their family killed by demons, or in the case of Tanjiro, the main character, if I remember his name correctly, that his parents were killed by demons, and his sister is like a demon, but she has like some abilities. Like she's like the only demon that can be around during sunlight, and she's kind of struggling. She has almost she's like half demon in a way where she's not completely like a monster, but she kind of loves and cares about her older brother really. So I'm almost like the power of love really. And a lot of these other demon slayers come from those backstories, and there's people who become demons either because something happened to them or they got infected by another demon to become a demon. Almost like with vampires, like you're saying, like a lot of vampire films or zombie films where it takes like a bite or and surviving that to become a demon. So so there's ways people become demons and demon slayers, and in this movie, it's really about them trying to find the head demon in the Infinity Castle. So I think it's like a vampire film. I mean, it's similar to vampire movies where if you kill the head demon, more than likely the whole castle's gonna be destroyed and everybody who survived is gonna be released. Really, just like when you watch like Castlevania, there's video games like Castlevania or other movies where you kill the head vampire or kill the head boss. Really, usually their lair is destroyed and whatever. And I also think about the film reminds me of Enter the Dragon by Bruce Lee with like how and if you remember that movie closely, he had to go through a building and fight different people to get ahead. Or it reminds me a lot of another great example is Rurouni Kenshin, where if you remember the arc with Lord Shishio, you had they like Kenshin had to go and fight multiple swordsmen, but there was one person that one of his friends, Sanosuke Sagara, had to fight, and there was another person, I think it was Aoshi versus Saito or whatever, really. So there were some people in his group that had to go off and fight somebody else, really. The other thing that reminds me of is like Lord of the Rings, because because what happened was that the Demon Slayer Corps, they have this ability where I think they're trying to map out the castle, and they send like these birds that are almost like surveillance cameras, where they'll send these birds, like these crows, to kind of observe what happened really and announce who's won and who's lost really. Like at the end of the film they announce that Tanjiro and a couple other people are successful in some battles that they have really. So it kind of has all those elements to it, but I think that, like I've said before and I'll say it again, that when you have lots of flashbacks, when you have a lot of characters and they have a lot of flashbacks, there's two things that I'll say that it reminds me a lot of what I said about AEW, where if you do a lot of tag team matches or you focus on a lot of characters in one story, it gets very, very, very hard to pay attention or be invested because it feels like there's a lot of jumping around. But I do understand that if you watch the show, a lot of people say that about the show, where just like in Naruto or Bleach or a lot of like other long anime series, is that you focus on a community of characters really. So I think the movie was trying to do that, but it can. But when you kind of have that in a movie format, it can feel repetitive because in good storytelling, you give characters enough backstory to be interesting, and sometimes that's very minimal, like in Pulp Fiction, or that could be, you know, very lengthy in other films as well, really. Like, you know, I can't think of a film, but definitely the Naruto series or in Rurouni Kenshin, the Lord Shishio arc in a series of episodes, that's important. But also in good film editing and good filmmaking, you have to know how to trim the fat, really, because if you have too much focus on too many characters, the movie becomes long and boring and overdone. Really, I think I'm not sure, but I think there was a film called Nashville where it focuses on the music community in Nashville. I think that was kind of one of the criticisms. That was by Robert Altman, if I remember the middle film correct. If I remember the name of the film, if the name of the director correctly. But I believe that the summary of the film is that it focused on music festival. One of the reasons why it was such a long film is that they focused on so many characters. And then also too that when you focus on a lot of characters, it can go from these people are interesting to, you know, oh my god, this is just, you know, longer than it needs to be. Trim the fat, really. So I think that ultimately they need to kind of understand what's appropriate for an American audience when they make the next film, and kind of trim some of the characters. And I think what they tried to do was try to use all the source material because this came from a manga. Like the episodes are based on a manga, the movies are based on a manga, really. So sometimes when people have a book, they'll maybe like, hey, you know what, I want to incorporate all the pages, all the pieces of fat really into this. But the problem is that you make something, you know, way, way too long. If I remember, I've never seen the film War and Peace, but one thing about War and Peace is that the book was, you know, I believe like, you know, over 400 to 600 pages. I believe it was like 800 pages or more. But the movie War and Peace was over 6 hours, really. So I'm not sure. I've never seen the film, but I had no desire to see the film. But you kind of see my point, really. If it could have been shortened, or you know, even like when you watch Lord of the Rings. Lord of the Rings, a lot of the books are super long, really, but they did enough to make the films action packed, really, and have good story and good pacing. But I don't feel this film does that. The other thing that I will say about the film is, you know, the strengths. That I think that a film called Infinity Castle, or I call it Infinity War by mistake, but the Infinity Castle is that because it is a repetitive storytelling format. It feels very, very daunting. It feels very, very daunting, and I think that if you want your characters to feel if you want your audience to feel what the characters feel, they've done that very successfully. Like there's fight sequences, you see these epic fight sequences, you see these flashbacks in a very repetitive format. It feels a little endless, feels a little daunting, and these characters don't know if this castle's going to go on forever, or maybe it's one of these things like an MC Escher painting or like an optical illusion where it goes on forever and stuff like that. So the idea of when you watch this film and it takes a long time and it may tire you out, gives you kind of that sense of this shit feels like it doesn't really end, really. And that's kind of how Tanjiro and all their characters feel. Like this shit doesn't really end. You know, where's the head, you know, nigga in charge, really? And how we're gonna like get that head nigga and just end all this shit, really. I also so I think, like, you know, like, and sometimes, you know, you want your audience, and that's in good storytelling, you want your audience to feel what you feel, really, you know, and that's good, really. Like, you know, I like Lawrence of Arabia. I'm planning to go to Saudi Arabia, but you know, when you watch Lawrence of Arabia, there's a famous scene where Peter O'Toole is playing with a match. He blows it out, and then you see the sun, really, and it's kind of like because you know we can associate the feeling of a match because a match is common, but we can't associate the sun, really. So when you watch Lawrence of Arabia and you see, like, you know, those scenes, and you see like the desert and like how big it is and how hot it is and how dangerous and how epic it is and all the wide shots, it makes you feel like, holy shit, you know, like this is a crazy thing to be in. But when you watch Infinity War through the editing and the storytelling, if they wanted to make it feel like this is a daunting, endless experience that Tanjiro and other characters are going through, mission accomplished. And I think that might be the case. You know, just like the film The Revenant. One of the reasons why The Revenant was such a long film was to make you feel like Leonardo DiCaprio's character was in an endless situation, such as traveling through Northern America, to get his revenge, really. Another thing that I would say as a strength is, the animation and the cinematography was all really good, like very bright colors. It definitely really showed that they really, really cared about putting all the money that they can in this, while making profit. I'm happy that Yuki Kajura, which she is the Ennio Morricone of Japanese anime. I'm very, very, very blessed that she's in this film. Like, like she does the music for this. Like she did the Japanese anime noir, but she's done hundreds of anime and deep and just like Ennio Morricone, she needs to go down in film history and in anime history as one of the greatest composers ever. Like I would sell my soul to the devil to make sure that she is remembered. I I'm hoping to go to Japan at the end of the year, but if I could go to a Yuki Kajura concert in Japan, that would be a moment that I'll remember and I'll cherish for my entire life. Really, when she dies, like she's in her 60s, but if she when the day that she dies, by natural causes, not threatening her life or whatever, I would go to Japan and I would put flowers on her grave and I would play a song and I would, as a man that can't cry, I would cry on her grave because her music knows how to hit the soul. Her music knows how to hit my soul and so well, really. It's weird because sometimes when I listen to her music, when my body, like I work a lot of hours, so sometimes my body's in pain. But when I listen to her music, it almost like heals my body, as well, really. But her music carries a lot of emotions and a lot of like power, and for her music be included in a film that's breaking box office records that could be nominated for an Oscar, as best foreign film or best animated film, that hits my heart. That makes me say, you know what, the day that I die, I'm happy that I lived long enough for her to get that because she fucking, 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 fucking deserves it. Yeah, like I said, she may be like a Greek goddess of music. She may be a descendant of a Greek goddess of music. That's how well her music is done, and that's how well and beautiful her music is, in this film, but also in other medias as well. I will say that there was this demon that there was like these two girls, if I remember, in the film, and they fight this demon who has a bunch of fans, and one of his abilities is that he just like is able to he's able to breathe air and make it super cold, really. So when you breathe, it cuts your throat really because the air is so like dry and whatever, and it's so cold. That was kind of like the best battle in the film, in my opinion, because it came really early on in the movie, and it's kind of revealed that like these two girls, I believe that they're sisters, and one of them ends up dying in the film, and then the other one wants to avenge her sister, and it kind of shows their backstory where their parents were killed. They're hugging each other, begging for their lives, really, that they're going to be killed by a demon as well, really, and then turn into the Demon Slayer character. They turn into part of the Demon Slayer Corps, and then Tanjiro fights this. The second best fight is Tanjiro versus this other demon, who is very like muscular, and it takes a very, very long time for them to kill it. And it's kind of revealed that the demon had a very traumatic backstory, and he's choosing who he wants to be, really. Like, does he want to be this person that wants to be a blind, like, killing machine demon, or does he actually kind of want redemption, or does he want to, realize that his family or his mother sees him as someone with a good heart, not like a soulless, killer or whatever. About like how it's really kind of goes down that story about like how people remember us, how there's people in our lives that turn us into monsters because abusers can create abusers, hurt people can turn people into hurt people, hurt people can turn hurt people into another generation of hurtful people, and sometimes the love of somebody can really motivate us to change our ways, really. So there's a lot of just really, really powerful feelings about that. But what I would kind of say is, again, unfortunately, Tanjiro's fight comes at the very end of the film, so you have to go through all this stuff. Again, there are people like me who was like, because you have to go through all this like crap really to get to it. So those are the good parts. The other thing that I'm gonna say is, I think as a negative and I think as a concern really is that I don't really know how the other two sequels are gonna last, because I think what they're saying is there's gonna be like, this is a 3-part movie, so you're gonna get another part in 2027 and 2029. I think that that's a little too long. I would kind of do it year after year, not every 2 years, unless they're really working on groundbreaking animation. But I think that's not going to. It's probably going to be a diminishing return every single year instead of like Lord of the Rings, where every single year you're gonna do more box office, because I think it's a very repetitive format. And then also you're watching this 3 times in a row, really. So I think it's almost like, the second film is probably going to be like, okay, we missed this film, we missed the first film, we're going to watch it, it may feel a little similar. They're probably going to do the same type of sequence of long matches, for repetitive storytelling of flashbacks, and then some cool fights, and then we're going to get to the third part where it's going to be the ending, and everyone's going to be like, hooray, this is the ending, really. So I really just think that this film, because of the issues of it going on longer than it needs to be and feeling kind of endless, and that's not a good feeling for any type of movie watcher. I wholeheartedly think that that this might be a film that the sequels might not do as well, really, because it's just, really fucking boring. So I really would hope that they listen to the criticism and they say, hey, you know what, we have to do some changes, really, to make sure that when we get to that we just improve from this film. And I hope that if they kind of make the repetitive, super long story, it's not going to attract that many people. It's going to feel like Atlas Shrugged, the movie, where it's repetitive, and where the story, where it just does. I remember watching Atlas Shrugged, the movie, and there was a lot of bad acting and bad special effects, and just the acting was kind of really terrible. It reminded me, like, it was as if Tommy Wiseau directed that film, but they canceled Atlas Shrugged Part 3 because it was doing bad at the box office, and it was it was a laughable film, really. So I really just hope with the following sequels that they just do better and they improve the storytelling. And they may say, hey, at this time we're going to just do better, really. And then the final film, they make it their masterpiece, even if it's like a 3-hour, 3.5-hour film, really. So this is all I got to say, really. And I really hope that I do find the time to watch this again and give another review, really. But ultimately, it was a film. If I was to give it a grade, I would have to give it a C-, because ultimately, really the pacing of the film hurt this film so deeply. And I think that it actually would turn away people who walk into this blind. I think if you're a fan of this film, of this franchise and the characters, you may want to stay for the long run. But I think as a casual viewer or a person who's not really in the anime, you may be really turned off. I think the emotional beats and the power of this film is there, but ultimately, like I said, really, like anytime you watch something, you're like, okay, this is too long, I want to walk out. There's some serious flaws in the movie, and I felt that way. I think the first part with the 2 girls as demon slayers fighting that demon who had like frost breath, I wasn't sure if I was yawning and my eyes were watering because I was tired, or because I was crying because of how beautiful the emotions are, or if I was a mix of both, or it was just my way of processing tears because I have gone through a lot of personal trauma, really. So, there's things that get into my feels, but I really just want to keep, I want to give this movie another chance. It was kind of weird because I've been working a bunch of long-hour days, and I kind of was imagining that I was in the Infinity Castle going through all the hours that I'm working before I go to my trip to Toronto tomorrow. So, yeah, that's all I gotta say, and I really just pray that I have another opportunity to watch this film because I have a very busy life, really. But that's all I gotta say. It's a film with a bunch of flaws, really, but it's not a perfect film, and there's notable flaws in this movie. But I don't think that it's a bad film per se. It's a film where they made a bunch of mistakes in the storytelling and trying to make it appeal to a lot of people. So hopefully, they learn how to improve.